midnight brakes lock, hear the tires squeal. Red light can't stop, so I spin the wheel. My world goes black before I.
So we know that they connect here. So what we can do is we can just add them on, just for now. Oh, the CLR connects to the 9 volt. Why don't we put this right here? See if we can run a line up and down in a second. You know, this connects to ground. We put this one right here or not. And C7 also connects to ground. So we'll just put that right there. Why not? Oh, cancel. Route it out. Zoom to fit. Look at that. Now, obviously our PCB here is going to be way bigger than we actually need it to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move all this stuff down. I can go one part at a time, but we've still got our move group tool that I can just select move, group, grab everything here at the top. And if I now right click on this stuff, I go to move group, and I can move it all down to a point where you notice that I can also skew it from side to side, so I'm going to be careful that I keep it up vertically and move it down to a reasonable point. Notice that the blue background of the polygon disappears, and that just indicates that you've adjusted its size. It does that. Okay, don't think you're anything out of the ordinary if that happens. That's pretty normal. Now I'm going to go to zoom to fit and hit the rat's nest button. Rat. There we go. Now we've got all of our parts laid out here. Plus, we've obviously got stuff ready to go for being laid out, ready to for us to sort of utilize. There are a couple things here that we can learn. The first is that we've got tons of extra space here. If we're really conscious of this sort of stuff, what we can do is we can begin now to fine-tune our layout. Why not drag things around a bit here, just to see if we can get things a little bit shorter, right? So that it's not taking up the entire PCB. We can move stuff around so that we've got our parts sort of in a different layout, obviously, but a little bit more reasonable as far as the way that they've been oriented and all that sort of stuff. So, see, this is giving me some headache here. Having our 9 volt up here sort of like, ooh, it wants to be down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to make a decision right now. We're going to do this. Move all of this over. And flip this stuff around. Look at this. Now all of a sudden our routing becomes a little bit simpler. In some ways. Other ways it's a little bit more complicated. But what I've done is I've just made a decision to sort of do things differently than I was doing them in order to make a different part of my layout a little bit easier. So I'm going to add another ground down here. Actually move everything over a bit. Because I want to be able to have a ground and a 9 volt go to my DC jack. So there we go. Now this ground can just be used up there for another output jack or an input jack or whatever gets connected there. So now I can do some things differently. Move this stuff up, move this down. Put this over here. And go like this. Here's the thing. Now, see, what happens here is as I rotate this, every way I put them, it seems to land on a line that I sort of want to leave straight, or it lands on another pad. Well, what do you do in those sort of circumstances? That's where the package tool becomes handy. So what you do is I'm going to go to my little wrench here, and you go to package, right? And you can just click on the part now, and you can affect its package. Another way to do it is if you're on the move tool, for example, you can just right-click on a part. Oh, it's not cooperating with me here. Right-click. Come on, right-click, mouse. Okay, right-click here on the mouse. Go to package. Do that. I'm going to switch it to the 3 pad spacing, 0.3 inch pad spacing. Look at that. Now it's no longer lined up. I'm going to do the same to this one. No biggie. Now it fixes my problem without a lot of headache. It's pretty cool. And put this part in here. Put this part right here. And as I hit route, my rat's nest, look at that. All my parts now seem to be a little bit more clean laid up. Now these parts here are all a mess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tidy them up a bit. First thing I can do is I can actually lower this one here. If you look here, and I'll zoom in here for a second, you can have pads up to this, like because of the way I've set up my grid, this is as close as my pads can get. If I go any closer, look at that, it overlaps. So this is where it was before, height-wise, and there's a lot of space there. So all I'm doing is just tightening it up, bringing it as close as it can be. And I can keep it centered because this will help me later on. I'm going to do the same with this one. Obviously, this is as close as I can get, but I'm going to center it. Like that. Okay, I can do the same with these parts here. As close as I can get, but centered. Close as I can get, and centered. You can move this down, because there's empty space there, so that I can move this down. See, look at that, it sort of overlaps on the pads. I have space to move these out. Move these around. Look at that, I can move these all over the place. Now as I zoom out, look at that, again, I can bring all my parts down. In fact, you can just keep tweaking things until you feel like, okay, now it's really in a good space. Like for example, I want to move this C2 over a bit here so that I have these parts laid down in a very specific way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to affect its package. I'm going to spread it out like this. Look at that. Might seem small to you, but now I know that later on I can do things. So I'm going to move everything down. Just move group. Well, see, here's a question. If you look here, is that too close? Maybe. So rather than having it too close, I'm going to move it down. Just so that it's not so close, I'm going to move it just there, right there. That's good enough. Now I could spend all day fiddling with this stuff, literally. Like I could move this up here so that this is not quite so far. Move this down. Right. We can even start to move things over. Obviously, we don't need to have stuff so crowded. Well, we could do this, like there's no reason why we can't, start to move parts over so it fills up the big empty space. You don't need to have things quite so tight and, sort of move things around a bit. Why not? It doesn't need to be all so tight, hey? Well, you can fiddle with a layout forever. Really, like, there's no point in time when this is going to be done. I could just keep going and going and going until finally I give up and say, okay, enough is enough. But for now, I'm going to call it done. Not so much because it is done, but because I don't want to work on it anymore. For whatever reason. It's just too much effort to try to fiddle with it any longer, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. Okay, so once you're at that point, now you're going to want to route things. Now once again, just like with our schematic here, we could use two different tools. The first tool here is our line tool. We select line, we have a bunch of different options here for how our wire bends. Right? This is a right angle bend, so now everything, as you make a line, it always at right angles, always at that 90 degree. If you've selected a tool and you don't want to make that line again, if you go back right to where you started, look at that, the line disappears. If you left click, no line is made. So there's nothing for you to undo. So, if you've done this or whatever, as I press rat's nest, look at that line exists. Now I have to undo it to get it gone, until it's gone, right? So just a quick hint. Now, again, look, if you see there, like if I'm close to where this starts but not precisely on it and I click, it doesn't actually snap to anything. So if I make this line right there like that, look at that. I need to double click in order to get it to stop, to shut down. And see there, now it did make our connection, but it's not even quite connected quite to the center of the part. So I'm going to undo this. There's a better tool to use, of course. And this right here, we've got route manually. So it's actually like the net tool in the schematics. We're going to use a route tool here, and what it does is it draws the same connections, right? But it does it with automatically making them. So if I click here, it actually, look at that, it snaps to the center of that, and it highlights the two parts that need to be connected here, right? If I go here and draw more of a connection here, like look, all the parts that have to be connected in series with this pad right here, they're all highlighted. Okay. Here's some other cool tools about both the line and the route tools. You have options for your line bend. My favorite is the 90 or the 45-degree wire bend. So what this does is it automatically makes a 45-degree angle. Right, so I can go a line there, I can make a 45-degree angle there, just like that. Okay. Obviously, you've got all sorts of options here, including curved lines, S lines, freehand drawing lines, where I can go, woo. That's sort of cool, funky, hey? Look at that, all over the place. It's a little bit silly, but you see what I'm saying? All the different tools here are available to you. You can also set a miter. That's a bit of a curve, so we can go with a round miter wire or a straight miter wire. I don't ever touch that. I just leave it to whatever the factory settings are. We can go with widths. So for example, when I'm doing a single-sided layout, my default layout width is 32. See there how it's a much thicker, fatter line? It's much easier for the etching solution to work on this sort of thick line than it is for it to work on a thinner line like the 16 I was just using. Okay, so I'm going to leave my width at 32. Okay, now I'm going to start to draw my lines. So I'm going to go to my routing here. I'm just going to start to route things. And as I hit my rat's nest, what it's doing is it's clearing out the polygon for the lines that I make. So for example here, let me show you. See that? Now there's a little bit of space between the polygon and the line that I just made. Look at that. Really simple. Just start connecting all the lines right up. My computer makes a little dunk every time it happens, so I actually hit the mute button most often so that my poor wife doesn't have to listen to me going dunk, dunk, dunk all day long, making all these connections. Okay, so all the easy lines have been done. Oh, here's some more I can do. Easy lines. Now this is where it might get a little bit more complicated because some of these lines may overlap here. If I select this button here, you can see that line there. But if I select this pad right here, you can see the line wants to go right through where that pad is, but it isn't highlighted, it isn't connected. I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit and show you what I can do here. So what I'm going to choose to do instead is I have to actually go around. So I'm going to create it going around. Look at that. Now I've sort of solved my problem really easily by going around that pad. I hit my rat button. Look at that, rat's nest, nothing to do. All my parts are connected with a line. Now the last thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to right click on my polygon here, because there's one thing that I didn't do that I wish I had done earlier. See, when I look at all my lines here, all my different tracks for all my pads here, the space that's between them and the polygon, the ground plane, is really quite small. Like there's not a lot of room there, not a lot of space left for those parts to connect to each other. What's going to end up happening here is that it's really easy for the etchant to not quite etch all the way through that space, and will make it really easy for there to be tracks. Now I made these lines really thick, and maybe that's part of the problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the properties of the polygon. And here I've got a command here called isolate. And you can actually affect the distance between the polygon and the tracks, all the pads, all the everything, by changing the value of the isolate command here. You've got 0, 10, 12, 16. Let's start at 16 and see what happens. Look at that. See, now all it did is it went whoop, and it did some magic, and now I've got a bit bigger of a space. Let's see what happens if I go with an even bigger one. 16, what's 24? Try that. Oh, look at that. Lots of space now. Is that enough? Okay, let's see what happens if I go one more.